Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, Jerusalem psychotherapist. In this week's Torah and Psychology post for Parshas Noach, we're going to discuss flooding. Because obviously we have the dominant aspect in this week's Parsha of the flood, of the Mabul, which destroyed the world at that time, leaving Noach and his family to, recreate or regenerate the mankind, in a sense. And if we take this theme, this idea of flooding, we can relate it to psychology as well, because there's a behavioral therapeutic technique of flooding, which is used in the treatment against anxiety and phobias, where it's believed that by flooding a person, which means by placing them in direct exposure to the anxiety-inducing stimulus, it will cause them to experience their anxiety in a sudden, direct way and force them to regulate their emotions. And hopefully the idea is in a very quick and sudden way, by flooding them with these these emotions of anxiety and fear, it will force them in a way to regulate and to create a more balanced association and overcome the fear in response to this stimulus. But it's been argued that flooding is not actually effective. Rather, it can cause an exacerbation in the anxiety that the person experiences. To flood somebody with their emotions of anxiety can create a greater and more intense emotion of anxiety and strengthen the fear that they have towards this anxiety-inducing stimulus. And therefore it's suggested, which was argued originally by Joseph Wolpe, that it is what is best and more effective and is actually healthier and more beneficial is a gradual exposure, not a flooding, but a gradual exposure, or what Joseph Wolpe termed as being systematic desensitization. That a person is placed the person actually is challenged to regulate their emotions, but in a gradual way that helps a person to, both on in a physiological level, the anxiety, the symptoms that a person experiences in their body, and also emotionally, and that their mind is able to gradually habituate and learn to adjust and adapt and cope with the anxiety. And this is most effective and helps a person to function better in it through a gradual, systematic desensitization. And if we look at this week's Parshas Noach, ostensibly it's a situation of flooding. The world was in an unhealthy state, it was in a dysfunctional state. And Hashem wants to bring about change. And seemingly this change was brought about in a very sudden way, through flooding, bringing this mabul, bringing this water, flooding the world, and bringing about, as we can say, this flooding which helps to bring about a sudden, quick, and effective change. But if we look at the details of the mabul, it wasn't flooding in the sense of a sudden exposure to this water to bring about change, but rather it was a gradual process of systematic desensitization, in the sense that not only was the process of building the Teva a very long, drawn-out process of 120 years, where the people were warned that there's going to be a Mabul, but if we look actually in the sense of the time of the water coming down, it wasn't you could say, a miracle, a sudden phenomenon where Hashem flooded the world with a huge amount of water in a dramatic, sudden event. Rather, it was gradual. We have these 40 days and 40 night period where the rain came down onto the earth. And this is significant. This time period, this period of time of 40 days and 40 nights, in order to bring about a gradual, systematic desensitization, a gradual exposure through the rain that was coming down over this period of time, in order to bring about this change of the Mabul, which is not a flooding, but the gradual process. And what's significant of this 40 days and 40 nights? We get this concept that 40 days is a period of time that is necessary to bring about change. 40 days is in a sense, the optimum period of time of this gradual exposure, this gradual process for change. And we see this also in the sense of it's topical for this time period that we've been through Elul to Yom Kippur, that we know that the period of time from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur is 40 days. This is seen as the period of time of Teshuvah, the period of time, the amount of days that is necessary in order to bring about change, in order to do Teshuvah. The days is significant. The 40 days is significant. We learn this from the Mabul, we learn this from Yimei Teshuvah of Elul until Yom Kippur. It also comes up in different contexts as well. Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights in order to receive the Torah. This was a period of time to take a nation of slaves and help them to move on through this transition and to change into a people of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the people of Torah and mitzvahs. It needed this 40-day period of time. And then when they sinned with the Chet HaEgel, again, another 40-day period of time in order to do tshuva for the Chet HaEgel. And if we look at it in other contexts as well, it's very interesting where this comes up, that from a biological sense, we see that the gender of a fetus is determined after 40 days. After this 40-day period, science has shown that at that point, the gender is determined whether it's going to be a male or female baby. And similarly, from a scientific point of view, in neuroscience has shown us that in the process of neurocommunication, of neurotransmitters, there's the function of the dendrites, the axons and the dendrites, in terms of communicating, how neurons communicate, how they transmit and receive information in order to generate action, behavioral actions or thoughts. And in a situation where the dendrites, which are these projections from the neuron, which receive information, if they are damaged, there's actual science research has shown that they can regenerate. These parts that come off the neuron that receive information can actually regenerate and repair themselves. And this takes a 40-day period of time. So even if we see that the body, the neuroplasticity of the brain is hardwired to bring about change through a 40-day period of time. So we see this message that a gradual exposure or change needs to come about, and it can come about through this 40-day period, which we see from this week's parasha. And this is an important message for us, especially now after Rosh Hashanah and after Yom Kippur. And we can continue to learn the parasha. We can continue to understand that if we want to bring about change, it's not going to be sudden. It's not going to be in a way through the technique of flooding. It has to be gradual. It has to be a slow and steady process to bring about a healthy, productive, functional change. I wish you a good Shabbos and keep well.